All right, good evening, everybody. Yeah, come on, y'all. I know it's Friday. Y'all here. It's raining. It's still warm, but I know y'all are like, I'm here on a Friday night, so we're gonna enjoy ourselves while we're here, right? All right, so we're gonna do it again. So we're gonna try it again with that energy. Good evening.
Good evening.
There y'all go. All right. Good. First, I gotta say this. Miss Trice over here, came from, I don't know where you came from, but she lives in Michigan. I didn't know she was coming. But she was like my mentor. Now she's like my mother, Michigan mom, who just popped up on me. And I didn't know she was gonna be here. And we've known each other since I first started teaching. Internship year, back in like 1999. So like, shout out to her just real quick for just. All right, so when y'all saw me do this, if y'all saw me, that's what I was doing. Like, I didn't see a ghost, but I sort of did. All right, I am Curtis Lewis. I am the assistant professor at Michigan State University, as well as the proud founder and CEO of BMEA, Black and Latino Educators Alliance. You see people with these shirts on. Those are my colleagues who wanted to come out here and join me as well, so shout out to them for being here. They're also good people. Thank you to Georgetown, for everyone who reached out to invite myself and Maria to be here with us. We're getting to know each other. I feel like now we've known each other for a while, even though we just sort of just met over email. So thank you for sharing that important information. I think looking at what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and the things that we need to continue to push is important. And just shout out to you also for the idea, like people have been trying to recruit and been talking about this for a while, right? But you know. So what I want to do today, first, I like to just who is this guy in front of me? And that's important because I'm coming to you with the various experiences and things in my life that has made me who I am today. It pushes my passion. It is also my why. So, not going to spend a lot of time, but I'm from Chicago. I'm proud. Anybody from Chicago? Around Chicago? No? Okay. Your mom is. Your mom is a great person. That's great. So I have 4 children that I'm very, very proud of. A lot of siblings, a lot of nieces and nephews who are like my own extended children as well. So I love them just as much. It is 35 plus of them. I stopped counting probably after 35, but it is quite a few of them. Just a little bit about me, as I know the bio also explained this. I've been a teacher. I was also a math teacher. I've taught K through 12. I also taught in alternative education, and was a principal. And went to Michigan State. Love Michigan State. It has sort of go white. Go. Okay. Did you say that?
Somebody else up there.
Go. You went to Michigan State? Did you say go green?
No, I said anything.
You said go green. Okay. I'm like, somebody else said go green. I didn't want to believe this was right. All right, well, go white. All right. I was about to get a hype. Like, no, that is not me. All right, my apologies. So, got my degrees from there. I also do some work. I just left the Bronx a couple of days ago doing some PD with some schools out there. And also the organization that I'm the founder of started back in 2000. Started 15 officially. You know, you don't become official until you get that number from the government. So we got that number in 2017. So that's when we were officially established. So I start off all the time with anything I do, any classes I teach at Michigan State with this picture. Because this is my family. These are the people who ground me, keep me grounded. They get on my nerves. Y'all know how family can be. But these are the people who keep me grounded. I like to show we didn't know the pandemic was coming, but this is right before the pandemic in, I believe, 2018, 2019. So I like to show this. And then these 3 pictures here, I also like to show because this first picture is of Ms. Hill, who was my 8th grade teacher. She's one of the reasons why I decided to go into teaching. She was a math teacher. The way she engaged us in math was just it was something that I remembered, and I oftentimes found myself being very similar to her when I was a teacher. So, love her. She meant a lot to me. Next is my brother who passed away a few years ago. Also, that's my older brother. He thought he was my dad, but he wasn't. But he also meant a lot to me, so I carried his love with me. And also this last picture, here's my nephew who just recently passed away 3 weeks ago. And so he's someone who, obviously, I told you my nieces and nephews are very close to me. And so carried all 3 of these folks with me as I travel the country, as I do this work, they're always with me. So I always just like to just shout them out because we're humans, right? And oftentimes we leave the human aspect of this work that we do out. And I like to make sure we remind us of that. This is me. Don't I look the same? I look the same. I did thank y'all. Y'all supposed to say, yes, she looked the same. All right. This is me as a teacher. A year after I met Ms. Trice. And this is one of my students here. And I like to show this picture because, again, it's a reminder of the work we do. I am an educator at heart all the time. That doesn't change. Even though I've been an administrator, even though I'm a professor at Michigan State, even though I have a nonprofit, I'm still an educator. And that's what I do. And I like to just show this picture because I thought it was a cool picture. And this looks nothing like me right now. So, all right. So real quick, we're going to talk about throughout in the next 25, 30 minutes, I'm going to really begin to look at historically what sort of led to this teacher shortage, but in particular, the shortage of teachers of color, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on black teachers, and the role that Brown versus Board of Education played in that. And when I move forward, I'm going to also, it's going to be a little depressing, all right? I'm just going to start it like, you're going to be like, oh my God, right? But we'll leave on a high note and talk about some of the things that folks are doing, like my organization and the work that we're trying to do to only increase, but also look at how we're transforming schools. So we're gonna start with, I want us to dream for a minute. All right, so I'm gonna show a quick video. I may not show the whole thing, it's only 4 minutes. I may stop it because you'll get the picture after a while, but I want us to think about for a minute, what is possible, right? Because I think it's important for us to talk about, if we're being intentional about this, what is actually possible for us and what this would actually look like. So,
the way that our society sees young black and brown youth, particularly teenagers, the messages that are conveyed to them is that they're dangerous and we don't want you to be here. We want you to disappear into the background or we need to subdue you. Very rarely are there spaces and places that say, in fact, not only do we want you here, we want to hear your voice. We want to see how you show up in all of your glory. And that's really what we're trying to create here at our high school. We want them to know that who they are, what they have to offer, that is the thing that matters most, and that is the greatest currency that they could have. What kind of experience do we want to provide young people that is going to best position them, empower them to enter adulthood in a way that's going to help them thrive? And for all the young people we serve, almost all of whom come from low-income backgrounds, who are black and brown young people who've been trapped in cycles of generational poverty, it was pretty obvious to us that instead of centering information acquisition, we instead wanted to center this idea of being an entrepreneur. That the first business that you're going to start is your own adult life.
Like in Ember, they give us an opportunity to create our own business plans. And in regular high school, they make you do unnecessary work that's not adding up to what you want to be in life.
We wanted to create a space and a place where we treated them like entrepreneurs, where they could exercise a lot of agency.
In the high school in particular, the teachers, we refer to them as our consultants, and they refer to us as entrepreneurs.
It goes deeper than just a student-teacher relationship.
The consultants are really big on advocacy, and that if there's something that you want or if there's something that you would like, that you advocate for it.
But you also can have people that help you, but it's also based around you and what you want to do to become successful in life.
We thought, where do most young entrepreneurs work? They work in co-working spaces. And for most of the industries and the spaces that they're going to occupy and enter as adults, that's exactly right. They are modular.
I feel like it gives us a sense of professionalism that we didn't have in other schools.
Most people don't expect high school to look and feel like this one does.
I think that I like this space better than being in an actual schooling because it makes me feel almost older. I feel like I'm in an office space.
You don't have to sit at a desk and sit upright in order to do your work. I don't work that way. No, you don't work that way. Most people don't work that way. They sit on couches, right? They sit on beanbags when they have to. They stand up, they walk around.
It gives us a lot of freedom.
So where we are right now is not ultimately where our home is going to be, but what our real vision.
All right, so I'm gonna stop us there for a moment, and I want us just to imagine and think about what are you noticing in this video? I want to ask y'all to share out yet, but just thinking about what are you seeing in this video as it relates to students. I'm going to tie that back to our to one of our thoughts I'm going to have around why we are having concerns or issues with our getting teachers of color into our classrooms. So here we go. So I want to paint a real quick picture. Y'all have seen this before, but I want to sort of just ground us in sort of our current state, like where we're at in education across the board, right? This is the number of teachers that's leaving the schools we'll talk about in a second is astounding, right? And so I want to just really quickly remind us of where we're at as we begin to take this sort of journey back into history.
The men and women who educate our children are increasingly burnt out, struggling with the aftermath of 2+ years of the pandemic, increasing scrutiny over curriculums that has put many of them at the center of educational culture wars, not to mention fears for their own safety. And oh, by the way, there's always that issue of low pay. Nationwide, there are more than 280,000 fewer teachers now than at the start of the pandemic. 280,000! That's according to the Department of Labor. That is a crisis that is impacting school systems in both urban areas and rural areas. It's in every region of the country. Virginia has more than 2,500 teaching vacancies right now, according to the Virginia Department of Education. Kansas could face its worst teacher shortage in state history this fall. They have about 1,400 vacancies right now. How about the state of Arizona? Schools are opening shortly, and they're going to be short more than 2,200 teachers. These shortages have forced some state and local governments to take some drastic steps to attract more candidates or keep schools open. Let me tell you about Alabama. They've had to lower their requirements to receive a teaching certificate. Boy, that's uplifting. Some districts in rural Texas that are struggling to find teachers have decided to move to 4-day school weeks. Want to talk about uneven educational outcomes? Then there's Florida. They're turning to military veterans, some of whom don't have bachelor's degrees at all, to lead these classrooms. Getting to the root cause of what's causing these teacher shortages may be difficult because it's all over the map. But perhaps even more challenging is determining the effect of those shortages and, more importantly, how to fill the vacancies.
All right, so as he mentioned, since COVID, we've lost quite a bit. That number is astounding. Low pay, as we know, we've talked about that for years. Academic constraints and mandates, like sort of these curriculum battles. Fear for safety now. You guys are hearing all the school shootings, so folks are concerned. There's debate on whether folks should have guns and stuff in school, right? And just overall safety of the students. So these are all the various concerns that, like, just thinking about it, if you're like a young high school student and you're like, man, I wonder what I want to do when I grow up, right? And you begin to think about and you hear all these things that's happening, why would you choose teaching, right? If this is what you're constantly seeing, all right? So it's important for us to just to ground ourselves in what is reality. And I won't go over this much. I mean, this is the teacher pay. And what's really important to know here is that teachers make on average $2,150 less than they did 10 years ago when you adjusted for inflation, right? And even though we know there are places where salaries are going up, when you look at it as it relates to compared to with inflation, you know those numbers are actually less than what folks were making 10 years ago. So, how do we get here? These are some numbers that I think are important as it relates to, in particular, my focus for a minute will be on African American teachers. There are 7% of teachers that are African American. 91% of our teacher force are white women. 91%. Out of the 7% that are African Americans, you have 2% that are black men, and in some places less than 2%. And then overall, approximately 11% of the nation's principals are black. And it's not much higher for other folks of color as well. So, let's go back real quick and sort of study a little bit around the Brown versus Board of Education ruling. As a result, as you can see in this map, as a result of the large numbers of high-credentialed and effective black teachers and principals, they were forced out. And oftentimes we don't talk about that. People often have this narrative that when folks, they started to change, civil rights movement started to make some shifts in the way we operate as a society, more black people began to have other options. Partly true. But there was some intentional, systemic changes and things that occurred by certain states and certain school districts that actually forced black principals and teachers out. But we don't often talk about that, right? We often just talk about, well, it was more opportunity. But that wasn't the case. People were forced to consider more opportunity. We go here, and I'll skip this for a second and get to here's just some numbers. But I won't read them all to you. But back in 1967, that the state dropped from 50 to 12. When you think about in Kentucky, right? The principals in that state dropped from 350 to 36 from 1954 to 1969. And this is a great plug for this book here. It's great. It talks about all of this, breaks down the role that Brown versus Board education had on a decrease. So I just think it's extremely important for us to understand that there was some intentional things done to once the Brown versus we began to integrate our schools, what began to happen with school boards and other folks who were superintendents began to turn down or say no or get rid of black principals and also black teachers. So that's where the decline began. So it's important for us to understand where it started. Some more just information, but I think it's important. That the demotion of black principals, a lower rate of hiring of black teachers, again, they weren't hiring folks in. So they began to have folks think about other professions, right? And so there was, and in this book it talks a great deal about this Senate committee in 1971, where this was brought to Congress back in 1971 saying, but this is a problem. What are we going to do about it? And so, just going back to this book for a second, this book, excellent resource to really get at the historical context around the why, where we're at today. One of the reasons why we're there. All right, so what is the impact of current issues and historical context on the number of black and brown educators today? So I'm going to talk about this pipeline. Now, just go back for a minute. I just showed this video and this school in New York where they're being very intentional about what they're trying to do, how they're engaging kids in what we call school. And that piece is important because it's going to help us think through this whole pipeline, this broken pipeline. So obviously we know there's a lack of representation in the teaching force. And one of the things we don't talk about is that schools are often oppressive institutions for students of color. So if I've been oppressed and traumatized by a K-12 schooling system, why would I want to go back and teach, right? And we don't oftentimes highlight that. So these practices and things that are occurring in our spaces are also impacting people's interests. One, I don't see people who look like me. That's important. Two, when I'm there, I'm not treated oftentimes, in some cases, like a human. So then why would I want to go back and go to a place where I wasn't treated well? Right? And so this pipeline issue is something that we have to also think about. We talked about the low achievement, and I can go into a lot of detail about the achievement and all that good stuff, but we won't do that today. That's not why y'all asked me to come here. Teacher pay. And then we think about the 6-year college graduation rate for black and Hispanic students is about 51.5%. So when we start thinking about a pool of folks, there's not much to pull from. Just continuing to work, thinking about the number of black and Latino students who remain, who drop out at higher rates than white students. We know oftentimes black and Latino students are suspended 5 times more amount of days than their white counterparts. This is not new stuff, but all of this stuff matters, right? So it's important for us to understand and go beyond. We need more teachers. Yeah, that is true. But some folks don't want to go back into schools to do this work, right? So it's important just to note that. I'm not going to go over this data. And so I'm going back to my original question here. And how do we go about recruiting and retaining teachers? It's a multitude of things that we need to begin to think about. One, yes, we got to figure out how to pay them more. That, for sure, right? Absolutely. Second, if we're gonna create a pipeline of folks that's coming through, because I teach at Michigan State and we're at some of our lowest numbers of folks in our undergraduate program. Right? Historical numbers, and Michigan State is touted as one of the best college of ed teacher education preparation programs in the country. Right? And we're struggling to get students interested, regardless whatever race they are, into the profession. And definitely a decrease in the teachers of color. Right? And so if we don't begin to address our issues and things that are happening in our K-12 spaces and begin to figure out creative ways to diversify, this problem will only persist. And it's important for us to figure out how do we create this pipeline, right? A fruitful pipeline, so that a long time, because the problem is, and we've talked about this before, there are a lot of these pop-up, it's almost like pop-up shops. You want to get certified, come to me. You want to get certified, come to me. And the important piece for us to understand is we are putting people in schools, in classrooms that are not prepared, right? That's not going to solve the problem, right? But so we're trying to put Band-Aids over a huge wound, but it's not going to work, right? And so we got to understand and begin to really dig deep and think about what are we actually doing in our spaces where people are afraid to even go into the profession. And those are the questions, that is a question along others that we need to begin to think about. So, what do teachers of color need? Joy. I'll talk about joy. We've lost joy in our schools. Like, man, right? We've lost joy. I talk to a lot of my students, and they talk about how, or teachers that I work with, the joy is lost for a lot of reasons. So people just going to work, just going through the motions. Support. People need to be supported. Autonomy. Right? This is a profession. And so when you're telling people what to do, how to move, what to teach, how to teach it, people are getting scripted curriculum, that has an impact on folks like, I'm already in the building for 8 hours, now you're going to tell me how to move and think and engage with my students. And then, obviously increase pay. And then this dismantling racist practices. We gotta talk, because oftentimes teachers of color feel the impact of those alongside their students. And oftentimes their hands are tied and they can't do much about that. And that's frustrating, right? So often you go through it as a K-12, you become a teacher because you feel like you can make a difference, but then you're inundated with the same practices that you felt was oppressive when you were in school. And nothing to do about it, right? There's nothing folks feel they can do about it. So let me go to some, some things that we can do. And this is a small, drop in the bucket, but it's an effort. So BMEA, the organization that I founded, we're focused on recruiting, the engagement, and developing. And Maria said it perfect. Recruitment strategy is also a retaining strategy. In order to retaining, keeping our people who are there is also a recruitment strategy, right? We keep losing people, recruiting people, if we're just going to keep on just end up in the same space. So it's important for us to figure out a way to keep those who are there, as well as figure out why and how we can recruit folks to come to the profession in a way that they go through a system and not just come to this pop-up shop and you get certified. So, a couple of things that we do at BMEA. We have a K-12 mentoring program. It's an intergenerational program that focuses on preparing high school students to tutor, mentor, and in a sense, introduce them to teaching by engaging with elementary school students. Right, so we're starting this in Detroit, and we have a program director that supports the development of our high school students that would then become tutors and academic mentoring is what we call it, supporting, mentoring, and teaching our younger K-5 students. Why is that important, Curtis? Thank you for asking. It is important because, one, as an elementary school student, you begin, to see someone who looks like you that's actually helping and supporting you, one. Two, as a high school student, you are sort of figuring out, what do I want to do in life? And it gives you the opportunity to explore teaching as a profession, right? To understand the joy and the benefits of being a teacher, right? And our goal is that we have a percentage of those high school students go matriculate into college and become teachers. Now, is that going to solve the problem next month or next year? Nope. right? But this is a pipeline issue, right? At some point, we got to start somewhere. Then we also have our career teacher fellowships, and that's all focused on the engagement, development, and retaining. Again, we got to figure out ways to keep the people there who are there. So we have a few fellowships. We have one for early career teachers who are in years starting off to their third year. And what we do is we support them by building a community of learners that we sort of talk about practices, culturally responsive practices, restorative practices, all those good, but we know practices that we should be implementing in all schools, right? So we do that work with them. We give them feedback. We support them. We coach them, and they build a community outside of school, and they feel supported. And so we have one just for males for years 1 through 3, and also we have a co-ed fellowship for veteran teachers for women and men. Just some quotes there from some of the folks who talked about the impact of the fellowship. Because we also know teachers often leave after their second, third year of teaching. So if we can get them and keep them beyond the third or fourth year, they're more than likely, it's a higher possibility for them to stay, and that's the goal. Then we also have our principal fellowship, because I talked about the leadership, the leaders, and 11% of leaders in this country are black. It's important for us to also have strong black school leaders, right? And so what we do in this program, because we know principals lead the work of the school, often for the most part, right? And so that's important for us to have and support our black school leaders as well. And so we have a fellowship that focuses on black male principals, and those ranges from years of 2 or 3 years of leadership experience all the way up to 20, right? And so many of them, and we started this right during the pandemic, and so many of them were on their way out the door, right? And we focus on the wellness piece as well, because it's oftentimes we don't talk about the importance of wellness and teachers taking care of themselves. So like, teach them the content, that's important. They need to be able to do that. They need to know how to manage their buildings as a school leader, know how to know the content, be an instructional leader, all those good things. But they also got to know how to take care of themselves, right? And how to do this work and stay sane, how to do this work and stay healthy. So that's an important piece, but we focus on both. Just a couple of quotes from our Principal Wellness Fellowship, 2 of our fellows.
Experience was phenomenal. It was many times that we would meet and I was having some things that I was dealing with that was troubling my own personal wellness in the school. And I would get on the meeting and another guy would talk about some things that he just had and he overcame, and I felt inspired. I felt like, all right, I'm not alone.
Well, our Saturday meetings were phenomenal because we got a chance to interact and collaborate with other leaders and to spend time learning about the various ways that we can provide care for ourselves in order to be stronger for our families.
I knew how important something like this could be, not only for us individually, but for our respective school communities. Because if we're at our best, then truly we can be our best for our young people and our school communities.
It definitely allowed me to be a better champion for the families that I serve. One of the things I realized throughout this time was the better I became well, and was able to focus on my own wellness, I was able to see where other people needed help in their wellness, my families, my students, and even my staff. So I was able to bring things that we talked about to school.
All right, so the last thing I'll share that we focus on is school professional development. I talked about the K-12 pipeline, right? The schools, we got to begin to transform, think about schools. Kids, the pandemic has taught our students a lot, right? But they have control over whether they show up or not, but they have control. There's different ways to engage in learning, right? And so we're seeing this push, and our students have been pushing before, but now they've been empowered to hold us accountable. So like, if I can Google this, what am I talking about, right? Why am I sitting in this class learning this material? How's this going to help me? I kind of know what I want to do, right? And we have to continue to listen, right? And so we engage with professional school-based professional development, all teachers, when we focus on these things, right? We want to ignite the creativity. We want to ignite the joy back into the classroom and help teachers understand and recognize the genius in all children. Children coming into the classroom, they're ready to go, and oftentimes we're not ready for them. And so this work around the PD, the professional development around our schools, helps our teachers, and we go in and I don't believe in one-stop workshops. We go in, we work with them for a year or 2 or 3, and we engage and work with them. We become a partner with them, right? So we're in there, we're at parent-teacher conferences, we're at parent meetings, we're in these PDs, we're in classrooms providing support. This is just one from one of the schools. I'll leave this out. So I want to kind of summarize this before I close out. So when we get to the question of how do we recruit and retain educators of color, we gotta like create this pipeline, increase interest, like we just do. And it starts in looking at our schools, looking at our school spaces, figuring out ways in which we can continue to move forward and transform those spaces for Black and brown children. Right? They have to see success. We have to do that. We have to do our part in making sure they're feeling loved, cared for, and respected in these school spaces. So that's the first thing. We got to really begin to do that work. We got to dismantle school policies that hinder the progression of Black and brown children, as I just mentioned. Like, there's policies where we talk about from dress codes to how kids wear their hair. So all these various things, Better Light has nothing to do with someone's ability to learn. Right, but we have these policies, these suspension policies. I know in the state of Michigan, this zero tolerance policy have gone away. Restorative is supposed to be one of the checklist things that they do before they suspend a kid. And so people are trying to get creative around this, right? But it's important, and it's more that we need to do. Again, create support systems in and outside of schools that focus on content development, pedagogy, and wellness. Schools can't do this alone, but like, how do we reach out to other organizations that are supporting, that can support the work around this for schools. Autonomy and joy must be at the center for teachers of color. People don't like to be told what to do. I know y'all was told to come here at 5 o'clock, so y'all probably resisted it, but this is like, that's important, right? And if you're gonna come, and you're gonna come to work, why not come to work and have fun? And then obviously there's increased pay. I'm gonna keep saying that. Just like pay people more. This letter, I won't read this all, but this is a letter from a white woman who sent me a message not too long, just the other day, and was talking about the impact that a Black male educator had on her. And as Maria was just talking about, and Amy was talking about, any Black male educators of color impact all kids positively. It has an impact on all students. And this lady is like older than me. And she's talking about something that happened when she was 9 years old. That was important. So I'll leave that there for a second. And just so you don't think I made this up, that's from my LinkedIn, as you can see over here on the side. As you can see. All right. Last thing I want to show is I just did this the other day at this PD, but I finished up. And I'm gonna go back to joy. Like, we gotta go back to experiencing joy in this space, right? People want to go to work, they want to have fun, and learning can be fun and joyful. This work is joyful. So let's. 5, 6, 7. Why we can't go back to that? All right. Thank you all. I appreciate your time and look forward to talking to the students later.